Welcome to Truth in Accounting's Ask the Experts webinar. Thanks to the Union League Club of Chicago for co-sponsoring. Today's topic is about the transparency in the city of Chicago. How does that relate to the infamous Chicago Way? We're going to learn more in today's webinar. My name is Bill Bergman. I'm the Director of Research with Truth in Accounting. We're a nonprofit dedicated to helping citizens understand government finance, which isn't easy, with a view to promoting truthful financial reporting by governments, which also sometimes isn't so easy. You can also learn about us at our website, where you can sign up for our morning call newsletter, which compiles government financial news every day. We also offer our Data Z website, where you can create and research cities and states and the federal government using charting and other data tools to study how your state, for instance, compares to other states on a wide range of financial, demographic, and other economic factors. Today's event dovetails with Truth in Accounting's new report on the City of Chicago's financial situation. We released our financial state of Chicago today that found out the city's debt is basically continuing to grow during the brunt of the pandemic, in spite of massive federal aid. We'll get into this later. But today, basically, we're honored to have John Cass as one of our experts. John's a Chicago columnist and the host of the Chicago Way podcast and proprietor of johncassnews.com. He's a former columnist for the Chicago Tribune and former member of the Chicago Tribune's Editorial Board, and has embarked on an exciting entrepreneurial journey in recent months. John's also a huge soccer fan, and I'm curious to talk perhaps about lessons from soccer, for example, in the area of teamwork and trust and team defense for citizens and government financial management. A question arises, are we all just spectators watching the game, John, or can citizens and taxpayers be good players too? Joining John and I today is Truth in Accounting's founder and CEO, Sheila Weinberg. Sheila is a CPA and has led Truth in Accounting's initiatives since 2002. Her commentary on the federal budget and state and local government finances has appeared repeatedly in numerous publications like USA Today, the Washington Post, and the Wall Street Journal. For today's event, everybody listening has a chance to ask questions via the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom menu. If you look towards your bottom of your screen and hover your mouse over the bottom, you'll see a panel with Q&A. Just type your question in that box at any time during the webinar, and we'll try to get to it later in the show. I'm going to turn it over first now to Sheila and John for comments, and then we'll get to the questions. Sheila?
Thank you so much, Bill. And thanks, John, for joining us. We're honored to have you. As Bill mentioned, we released our financial state of the city of Chicago for 2020 today, based upon their latest financial report. You can find that with the link from our truthinaccounting.org website, and go to data-z.org to get detailed information. Just click on city and then the city of Chicago, and it will give you the current financial state of Chicago. And then in addition to that, provide you with some historical data. Our latest report found that each taxpayer's share of the city's tax debt equals $43,600. Unfortunately, it's up by $2,600 from last year. And what this represents, again, is each taxpayer's share of the debt. Another way to think about this is if the city can't reduce its expenditures, can't reduce its pensions, retiree healthcare benefits, then each taxpayer will be paying that amount, $43,600, to the city in the future, and they will receive no services or benefits for the city from that. The city continues to underfund its pension liability. They put less than 50% into the pension plans. What their actuaries, they hire actuaries. The actuaries said put in X amount. They only put less than 50% of that. Therefore, the pension debt continues to rise, and now it stands at $33 billion. That's with a B. Another way to think about this amount is, in order to pay that $33 billion off, the city would have to lay off all of its police officers, firefighters, and other city workers for almost 8 years, take that money for their salaries and put it into the pension plan, and then they would be finally caught up. For the city pensioners, I'd be nervous about their plans, because the city only has 22 cents set aside for every single dollar that they have promised. I'm so sorry we don't have a good picture. Our final data point is the grade. We gave the city an F, just like we gave this Illinois an F. And even though the rating agencies are increasing Illinois' credit rating, we will go ahead and give Illinois an F again this year, because we're looking at it. We're doing a holistic approach at looking at this, looking at the taxpayers' risk. The credit ratings only look at the risk for bondholders, and we'll get maybe into that more later, but I'll turn it over to Mr. Cass for his opening statement, I guess.
It is a pleasure to be here with you. I think Truth in Accounting does a valuable, critical service for all the people of Illinois, particularly in Chicago. And without you guys, we'd be stuck with interpretations from newspapers and broadcasts, which tell us that whenever a tax goes up, it's only like $5 per $200,000 home. And I've always found that to be misleading. So much of what comes out of City Hall is misleading by design. Sheila, the number you dropped, 33 billion, is for what again?
That's for their unfunded pensions. They've underfunded their police, firefighter, and
Right.
City workers' pension plans, a municipal plan.
And what happens to, crime is a big issue in Chicago right now. I mean, it is the only issue, really. People don't want to be another statistic. And they see the news they see what they see and they feel what they feel, regardless of what they're being told by media not to feel a certain way, they do. What happens to city services when the people providing those services, cops and firefighters, realize that because of decades-long mismanagement, that they might be facing 40 cents on the dollar in their retirement? You kind of touched on it, but as a political matter, I think it's critical, because when they realize, hey, I'm not only not going to have the boat, I'm not going to be living in Florida, I'm also not going to have a house, and I'll be living in an SRO, eating pork and beans out of a can on a hot plate. It doesn't inspire confidence among the people that risk their lives to protect us.
Yeah, and the question is, are we harming, do people who are trying to recruit for being firefighters, police officers, city workers, do they look at this pension situation and go, well, I can't count on those benefits. Do I really, it's a dangerous city. And on top of that, I can't count on the benefits that they're quote promising. I think it's immoral to go ahead and promise these benefits, but not put enough money aside to pay them.
Yes, and it's not being, you're looking at it, Truth in Accounting is looking at it, but the question that we're talking about, the moral question and the issue of what confidence does it inspire in those who we dangle out there to protect us, while at the same time we don't have their back if something goes wrong. I just think that politically the whole thing is untenable. And just as a political reporter, not as a numbers guy, I look at the self-congratulatory backslaps of the political class for taking money from Missouri and Indiana and other well-run states and bailing themselves out in the temporary fashion, when if you're looking long-term, I don't see any structural changes actually happening. So all I see is people BSing their way about credit ratings without really talking about, they're not doing the structural changes. So as an investor, meaning me as a homeowner, as someone who's thinking about buying a home, what does that tell people? Invest in Illinois or get the hell out as fast as you can?
Well, John, you just started answering my first two questions for you.
Oh, sorry.
So let's go ahead and get into them. You know, last week in our prep call for this, you excused one of your prying question for us with the comment, you know, I am, after all, a reporter. So I guess my first question is for you. What is a reporter? What is the role of a reporter in our democratic framework? What and the relationship between citizens and their governments? How do you view a reporter's role?
Me?
Yeah.
I view a reporter's role as going out there, getting off your butt, getting away from the phone and talking to the people, knocking on doors, talking to the people.
That's how I view the role of an economist or a financial analyst in the same way. Have you seen the movie The Big Short?
Yeah, no, I haven't, but I've heard much about it.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, one of the lessons from that movie, those guys that get out from behind their computers and get out and kick the tires are the people that are that's how they get out and find the truth. So it was fun to hear your ideas about what a reporter really does and getting out there to the people.
Yeah, Bill, one thing that frustrates me with reporters, and sorry if I'm criticizing you, Mr. Cass, but
no, please do. I've been criticized by experts.
Is the city and the state and even local governments come out and they say they balance their budget. And the reporters don't look into, well, how are they balancing their budget? In Illinois, and the city, they can balance their budget by doing financing schemes. They can borrow money, they can refinance things, they can just not pay their bills on time. But then it seems to me that the press, when Illinois just issued a press release, that the governor and had a press conference that, we have balanced the budget, and that's what's reported in the newspapers.
Years ago, I was sent to Greece and Turkey to do a series of reports on the economy of Turkey and Greece. Greece was collapsing, Turkey was thriving. And they thought it would be a good way for me to go and not smoke. I just quit smoking, and the editors told me, no, you won't start smoking again. I said, okay, fine. So I show up at the Turkish foreign minister's office, and immediately tea is served, cigarettes are on the table. And he looks at me, and we start talking about the economy. And he makes this sound, this hand gesture, right? It's like cranking, and does a sound like. I said, what is that, please? Please explain. He said, you print your own money. So what do you want to, you're talking about the economy, but you're printing your own money. You're in debt to the Chinese for, I don't know. And those days, what was significant. Now it's just even beyond comprehension. So I think that generally, unfortunately, and this is not about, I don't want to criticize media, but media is often about feelings now. It's how you feel about things. It's how you feel about foreign policy, not real policy. It's how you feel about domestic policy. And as such, we don't have hard numbers people, and never have had, which I think if I could start over again and go back to the time that Thomas Jefferson was writing, editing his newspapers, accusing the great John Adams of being a hermaphrodite in those days, which was a crime then, I guess, a moral crime. I would begin by demanding of every city that accountants be included in the discussion of every budget, because feelings are nice, but they don't tell us the story. Hard numbers tell us the story, not all the story, not the whole story, but without understanding the hard numbers, we have no understanding of where we are. And you can't run a business that way, and you can't run a state that way.
Thinking about the hard numbers, quote unquote, Sheila, This touches on a topic near and dear to our hearts, is the distinction between budgets on the one hand and how the media pays a lot of attention to the budget, in part because people care about spending money, but do they care about accounting for it? And Sheila, could you talk about the difference between the budget reports that we get and those annual financial reports?
Well, the budget is just a plan, and as you're mentioning, the people pay attention to the budget. They buy into this concept that the budget is balanced. The City of Chicago's own financial report noted that, even though it had a quote balanced budget, they did that by financing the future liabilities, by financing pensions. They don't include all of the compensation costs in the current budget. They go ahead and defer that down the road. And again, that's what's in the news, this, and it's interesting. The City of Chicago, they always come out with, well, we're in a deficit, and then somehow miraculously, right before it's supposed to be, voted on, it's all of a sudden balanced. And it's balanced by using a lot of accounting gimmicks, and again, for some reason, the media and the people don't focus on that. The budgets really aren't truly balanced. And then when the financial report comes out, which is audited, and is it perfect with its numbers, but it's better and has a lot of disclosures. Correct me if I'm wrong, Bill. I think we only found one media outlet that has covered
the release. Well, we're not alone. When the federal government of the United States releases its annual financial report, it's to deafening silence. And the same thing is here in Chicago. The annual report for the city of Chicago came out. We just reported on it, and nobody is covering the report. It's a little discomforting and not a good reflection, I'm afraid, on the quality of our media in Chicago.
Guys, I'm out of it. I mean, I have my website, johncasnews.com. Hope you subscribe. But I do have a podcast too. I wonder if Sheila and Bill, would you ever consider coming on, talk about this?
Oh, we'd be honored.
I'd love to. That'd be great.
All right.
It actually, in a recent podcast, John, you had a line that was sparking thoughts in our hearts. The worst form of corruption you talked about was, it's not the illegal stuff, the ways in which corruption is legal. Could you talk about that idea? And actually, we have some ideas how that relates to accounting standards. Go ahead, John.
All right, I'll draw a hypothetical corrupt situation. I'm the president of the United States, and my ne'er-do-well son wants to sell his artwork. I don't know what the artwork is. It might be of crack pipes. It might be of stripper poles. I don't know. It's probably all interpreted. Now, somebody like Bill and Sheila who want to get to me will go to my son and buy the artwork. Maybe. And then it sounds like something right out of like Greylord from the 1960s, where a judge, somebody out there could correct me, but a judge, his wife was selling artwork and lawyers would purchase it. We're practicing before this judge. So all this stuff, and then the federal government comes out and says, we have firewalls set up so that Hunter can sell his artwork. I'm sure it's worth every penny of the 500,000 or so people want to pay. And maybe Ken Griffin can buy some because he likes artwork. I don't know. But they set up a legal framework to make it legal. Same way with Illinois, where they set up a legal framework. So I'm the Speaker of the House, and I also have a private business reducing taxes for 66% of the land of the owners of downtown real estate. It's all legal, but it does corrode. It's corrosive. It tells people like me, you, everyone listening, the average guy on the street, people trying to pay their tax bill, it tells them you're a sucker. You're a sucker and you don't count. And unfortunately, in this state, that's how we've been treated, probably because we wanted to be treated that way, because we allow it for years.
Well, Bethany McLean here in the Chicago area has written a book and or some articles about Enron, the fall of Enron. One of her rants is that the ways in which what happens when the rules themselves are the source of the corruption or the source of the deception. Sheila, do you have any thoughts on accounting and how that relates to, say, financial reporting by governments?
Yeah, we looked at, again, at a detailed review of the city's financial report when we did our analysis. And it actually showed, despite that we calculate that their financial condition decreased by $2 billion, it actually shows that it increased by $1 billion. And the difference is just different accounting ways that you account for things. So for example, in the city of Chicago, there was a lawsuit about their retiree healthcare benefits. The city said, oh, well, we're going to get rid of those benefits in 2022. This court said, no. You have to continue to pay those for an indefinite, they did not determine the amount of time. So then the city's unfunded retiree healthcare liabilities increased by $1 billion. But that didn't have to be reported on the city's income statement. It was done as a deferred, and I get confused, Bill, a deferred outflow. They have these confused, nobody understands these, but this is a way for governments to hide the true financial condition, what really happened in their governments. And in the state of Illinois, there's a quote, if you read deep, which I'm sure everybody's done, read deep into their financial report, their audited financial report, the comptroller quotes the state budget law, and then right below it, she says revenue and expenditures have not been provided in accordance with this law. Estimates have not been provided in accordance with this law. So you have a constitutional officer of the state saying that the legislature and the governor is breaking the state budget law, but nothing seems to happen. I don't know who can go after them, but I would think somebody should be able to.
One question I would have for you, both of you, and anyone else who's listening. As you describe this stuff in government, the lack of transparency, the gamesmanship, this has been going on for quite some time. So if I'm an accountant or in government and I engage in this, right? I'm in the group that engages in this behavior. When I leave government service or when there's a change of administration, historically, have such people been rewarded by the private sector?
A lot
like,
of times.
You gave us bad numbers, but you know what? Come on. There's like 6 figures here, 7 figures for you. Come on.
Well, I think that, a lot of times, and we've tried to fight, like trying to get the balance of, trying to fight to, say, yeah, they're not following the balanced budget requirement. Maybe somebody should sue them. And then it's like, well, who would sue them? And probably the best people to sue them would be vendors, because they're not getting paid on time.
Right.
But if you're a large vendor of the state or the city, you're not going to sue the government because you're getting a lot of business from them. And accountants are getting a lot of business from them. So even accounting firms are hesitant to point out the reality because, they're getting a lot of audit and consulting work from these governments that give them millions, if not billions of dollars of revenue.
So they keep petting the golden goose, keep getting the eggs from it. And the rest of us have a sense, perhaps not grounded in numbers, but in experience, to think this is a Ponzi scheme, and this Ponzi scheme is going to collapse, and I don't want to be the one holding, without the, sorry, I'm going musical chairs, I'm mixing metaphors, but, right? I mean,
well, one thing that postponed the day of reckoning you talked about already, John, and that's the ways in which folks in Missouri and Idaho and Iowa now have a little more skin in the game. Should Chicagoans and Illinoisans be happy, do you think, with the fact that the federal government has arrived with so much, quote, pandemic relief, unquote, for the city and the state?
I remember when Martin Koldyke called me when I was in the hospital years ago. And there was a strike going on, strike of public teachers union, striking. What do we do? And I said, man, I'm in the hospital. I can't talk. I said, but let it burn. Let it burn. If you're going to save anything, you've got to let it burn. If you're going to save the future, if you're going to save the American family in the urban centers, when there was time, we would have acted on the great Democrat Daniel Patrick Moynihan's report about how the welfare state was destroying the family. We had time then, but we didn't, and generations continued, and destruction continued. Almost systematically racist in my view. And all that continues. So
You sound
I don't
like
know what to say.
You sound like a good bank regulator, John. And what I'm talking about now is, the idea about, what do you do with failing banks? Should you prop them up and let them gamble for another day? Or should you let them go down? Should you let it, is that healthier for us in the long run?
It's healthier for the people in the long run if the problems that you bring out, that Truth in Accounting and others like you bring out, were exposed and there was real pain as a result. Because there's not real pain, because we borrow money, because we print our own, because we keep doing all this, because we take money from well-run states and basically suck it up into our pension plans and other, play games with it, hide the P under the P, play games so that Governor Pritzker can talk about how he's being financially responsible. That's dangerous. It's dangerous long-term because it doesn't solve any of the issues. And unfortunately, sooner or later, you guys are the numbers people. I'm the word guy looking for bad metaphors. You run into a problem where eventually the bad numbers or hard numbers cannot be placated. You come to that point,
including with the federal angle, relating to
yes,
your that conversation you had with a fellow talking about the printing presses.
correct.
Here's an audience question right now relating to that. It's a little bit long, but I'm going to read it anyway. The Truth in Accounting website states that the debt is $28.7 trillion and the truth is closer to $133 trillion. We're talking about the federal government debt now.
Yeah.
Assuming Congress remains on the current path of deficit spending, when will the sovereign debt crisis occur, in your opinion? A hard question. What are we talking? How long can we count on that federal backstop in Illinois and Chicago? At some point, creditors, he says, will stop buying new U.S. debt, especially when the U.S. devalues its dollar, making existing bonds less worthy. I would be interested in your thoughts on whether or not a sovereign debt crisis is inevitable. A hard question, but what do you think, John?
I think it's all inevitable. The political outcome, the political reaction, you're already seeing it. Young people, my son's ages, are horrified. I get a sense that, like that movie, where they turn people into baby boomers into crackers. That's really not too far off because I think the fiscally responsible young people, not those who are just going to use politics to grab somebody else's wealth, but those who realize the long-term implications are horrified. And this horror is building every day. And it translates into politically into antipathy towards guys with white hair, right? But eventually,
whether or not future generations and young people today are or should be confident in what their superiors, at least today, or at least their elders have left for them, is a hard problem.
Yeah, and I don't want to I want to take it back to today, and how does this all affect what's going on today? And I always go back to that balanced budget requirement. And the reason that the cities and the states have this requirement is so that they don't go into debt like they are, but more importantly, for accountability. There's a great quote by a former Treasury official who said, the elected officials shouldn't have the pleasure of spending, i.e. they're going to get a vote, without the pain of taxing, i.e. they're going to lose a vote. And that's why you have these balanced budget requirements. And you would think in Illinois, if they weren't playing these shenanigans, and in Chicago, they were, if they had to truly fund their pensions as those were growing, if they had to, if they had to earlier raise taxes to cover the amount of benefits and services they were providing, this affects our voting. People went to the voting booth assuming that the budgets were balanced, but if the governments would, the state or the city would have had to raise taxes to truly balance their budget, would the elected officials have gotten reelected, or if they had to cut services or benefits? So, we talk a lot about numbers, but at Truth in Accounting, but I really think that this is hurting our representative forms of government, because people just don't know the right information on, should I try to advocate for a tax cut? Should I try to advocate for additional spending? Because they don't know the right numbers, whether they should, so they don't know the real answers to those questions.
There are a few Kristen McQuarries left, right? The editorial page of the Chicago Tribune, when I was on it and she was on it, paid attention to this stuff and to what you were saying. The other newspaper in town doesn't, because for the political reasons you can understand. And the broadcast media doesn't care because they're into, I don't know what they're into, maybe
they're into clicks.
Water skiing squirrels before the break, something like that. And so people don't get the information they need, and they continue perpetually on this treadmill. But there's a general state of anxiety. That state of anxiety is building. And I see all these stories, oh, the real estate market in the suburbs is wonderful, and please buy some real estate in the suburbs. Remember that after the riots, whatever we're supposed to call them. But the truth is that the numbers are the numbers are the numbers are the numbers. And eventually, and the smart investors, I don't think, buy property in Illinois for that reason.
Yeah, one thing that's happening right now in Illinois, and again, back to just the moral issue of promising employees benefits and then not having enough money to pay for them. As far as I understand, I think it's still going on. If you're a state worker or state retiree or a retired teacher, you have to pay for your medical services up front. The hospitals and doctors will no longer take the credit of the state because they're so delayed in paying their bills. Now the federal bailout helped that. And Illinois, as far as I understand, Bill, they weren't supposed to use that for prior bills, but just coincidentally, just a coincidence, when they got these states, they got the state bailout money, the federal bailout money, just coincidentally, the unfunded bills went down dramatically, but they weren't supposed to, they didn't use that money for those bills. It just seemed to be a coincidence.
They used other money in the general fund they're playing hide the P. It's like 3-card money with taxpayers.
I have a question from Jerry Turner in our audience, John, that relates to something that you were touching on.
Sorry, say again.
I have a question from Jerry Turner in our audience, who has relating to your observations. And you opened the door, so I'm going to ask it. And he asked the question, with all the departures from the Trib, do you think the editorial board is going to be, where is the editorial board going at the Trib with respect to, say, government financial reporting and financial matters?
Actually, Jerry, I don't know. I'm I'm in the dark now like you are. I do read both. I read the Wall Street Journal, the Chicago Tribune, New York Times. I read Jacobin magazine to find out what the hard lefties are doing. I read it all. Read Real Clear Politics. I read it all. And still, and link to them on johncastnews.com. But I cannot tell you, there was a feeling on the editorial board when we were there that we carried the weight of all those prior to us, previous to us. All those. Jack Fuller, Lois Willie. Some people may remember Jack and Lois, Pulitzer Prize winners, Don Wycliffe, John McCormick, Bruce Dold, and many others before. I don't know. I know that Chris Jones is an excellent writer. He's been named, I think, editorial page editor, but he's also going to be doing theater reviews, so I don't know how that will work. I do know that
Some politics theater now.
The theater? No, that sounds
relevant. I guess he might be poaching on my territory. Who knows? But yes, politics is theater, and he'll be good for that, I think. But as far as a conservative, fiscally conservative, somewhat socially liberal, although I'm not, position on the editorial board, I think that Parritter, who's the general manager now and part of the Knight Ritter family, grew up in that family, is clearly cognizant of the role the Tribune editorial board played. But I can just tell you that now, I have 30,000 subscribers on my website. I don't know what that means for others who may have lost subscribers or not. But I wonder, what bothers me the most, Mr. Turner, is that as local media begins to implode, these issues that Sheila and Bill and others in Truth in Accounting are bringing forward may be less. We're losing institutional memory. And without it, you're susceptible to manipulation by the manipulators. And so I worry that the people of Illinois, the people of Chicago, won't be told what's really going on with them. And there won't be a vehicle to get it out. I hope the papers do survive and thrive, because they're good journalists there still, and committed people. But it's all, the jury's out.
Well, we'll be watching going forward. In fact, that, watching how the media communicates is part of our mission at Truth in Accounting, and we're gonna keep watching that. I have a technical question I can't resist asking, because it's a question coming from the Champaign County Auditor, George Danos, and he's asking us a question, and it's a technical one, and I'm afraid it's a hard one. So Sheila, I'm going to ask you, I guess. Deferred outflows, what are those things on the balance sheet? Why not report the change in the city's net position as its deficit? Again, we're talking about a balance sheet, everybody. Assets minus liabilities gives you what's left over. Well, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, in their infinite wisdom, has introduced these new complicated and frankly deceptive accounts that I'm already answering Sheila's question. I'll keep asking it. Why not report this change in the city's net position as its deficit? Is this yet another layer of deception in government reporting?
Well, you don't think John wants to take that one on?
I'm just looking at a text from my brother who said, you should have set up your office better and done better.
Yeah, crate and barrel is kind of fun right behind your head.
It is another form of deception. So, for example, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, we were very pleased that in the last few years, they have required state and local governments to put their pension liabilities on the face of their balance sheets. But they also have to record their pension liability assets, their pension assets at market value. And as you know, the market increases and decreases. And so let's say that the market takes a hit. So therefore the pension assets take a hit. So therefore your pension liability increases. So therefore your pension liability would increase. And then in accounting, we do that double-sided entry. So we need another side. So you would report a loss of your assets. You would report a loss. Well, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board and the governments were like, well, we don't want to report a huge loss on our balance sheet when our assets lose money. We don't want to do that on our income statement. That would make our deficits look really bad, and we don't want to do that. So what they did is said, oh, okay, well, we're only going to make you put a little bit of that on at a time, and then the rest of it we're going to, I would say, hide in this account called a deferred outflow, which is actually on the asset side of the balance sheet. So let me get this straight, and I've probably totally confused everybody by now.
Definitely.
When my pension assets have a loss, it somehow creates an asset on my balance sheet. None of this makes sense, and yes, it is a form.
I'm sorry for even bringing up the quote.
It's a form of deception and misleading and confusing information.
Talk to or I just shake their heads when they look at this stuff, and it is the clouding of to the truth alone is. Well, we could talk about that. Let's not anymore though. Chris Tobey, actually a very learned observer of pensions. He's written a book called Kentucky Fried Pensions. Chris Tobey has the following technical question about, and it relates to John's concerns about the police pensions. I'm going to read it out loud. Who cares about the transparency of numbers besides TIA in Chicago? A Chicago Police Pension Accountability Group has asked me to investigate their pension. And Chris's lament is that in the last 2 years, they have decided not to issue a CAFR, just a bare bones financial. Also, they have disclosed fewer investment details by managers. That's Chris's concern, that in fact, they're not even issuing this required annual report for the Chicago Police Pension Fund.
Yeah, I don't know why they went away from, they are issuing financial reports, but they're no longer and it is audited, but they're getting away from the standard, what us accountants used to call a comprehensive annual financial report, but now we call an annual comprehensive financial report. And I think it just has a little bit less disclosure. It doesn't have as much disclosure as the other report does. So, just being a little less transparent, and, evidently there are some people who are paying attention to this, because some of the some people are concerned about the Chicago police pensions, and that's why they've hired Chris Tobey to be a forensic auditor to find out, well, how come this is in bad shape? How are they investing their money? One of these, like scratching I'm bad at idioms also, John. One of these, scratching, each other's backs is that, the pension plans have billions of dollars of assets, which is a good thing. They don't have enough. They only have 22 cents for every dollar that they've promised, but they do have billions of dollars of assets. So that those assets have to be invested. And then, well, where do we invest them? So they hire investment consultants, and they tell them where to put the money. Well, those investment consultants, some of them get paid very handedly. Oh, and some of them just happen to be contributors to these politicians' elections, but they get. So Chris, investigates that. And he's saying that they don't disclose how much each one of these investment houses are getting, which would be something that would be good for the citizens to know.
You'd think that I spent several weeks of my life that I can't get back in federal courtrooms, watching the teachers' retirement services and the political operatives who were involved and ended up going away. I think they lost just the baseball season. It's like, see you, Bill, but we'll see you after the baseball season. It was like that, a few months. And that I made notes when Mr. Turner, correct? The balance, the Kentucky Fried Pensions, and Sheila were talking because it's something I have to follow up on.
Yeah, no, Chris, it's Chris Toby. He wrote Kentucky Fried Pension, and yeah, he has done extensive research on how much these investment people get paid. And then, then that's kind of related to how much they contribute to these elected officials' campaigns sometimes.
Well, now I got a new column, so thank you very much. Glad I came.
Okay, we have another interesting, perhaps, question and or contentious one relating to something you talked about on a recent podcast, John, with wire points, folks. You were making an observation about the census numbers and the population number that was reported by the census. I believe you said you were suspicious of the census population reported change in Illinois population. Could you elaborate on that?
First, I asked point of personal privilege. Who's offering the question?
That's my question, John. That's for you.
Actually, the way it was described later by Ted was that, and I don't have it in front of me, I don't have my notes, was that basically earning power, the people who are earning money, creating wealth, those folks, even though the numbers of population were not dropping as drastically as we thought, that the numbers of people who were actually generating money that pensions could tax people at and pay for government services, we're leaving we're in the extreme and we're leaving. Did I get that right, or was I completely wrong?
Yeah, no, and if you think about it, there's always a discussion that the 10% of the this is at the federal side, but 10% of the population pay 90% of the taxes. And so if you take that to the city level or the state level, if that's true in the city or the state, it's not that you have to lose a lot of people. It's just you have to lose a lot of some of those 10% people who are paying 90% of the taxes.
Just lose the people in the condos in the near north after the second wave of looting and see what happens. Or Lincoln Park. You got rid of if everyone left Lincoln Park, I'd ask Truth in Accounting to tell me if the city could survive.
Well, it's just interesting to note that the states that had the surprises like Illinois in the actual population numbers, not the income numbers, but the states that had lower than expected population declines based on the annual results that came out in the years before that 10-year census came out, all tend to be states with financial problems. And it's an interesting question that may be worth exploring. All right, here's a good question for John from Justin Carlson. Does the way the public policy information like public debts and finances, does the way the public gets it, does this have to change if the major papers and the broadcast media aren't reporting these things well anymore? Do you think there's hope for alternative media platforms like podcasts, blogs, or what you're doing right now, John?
I think that eventually I believe in the marketplace, and people will want to know, and they're not just going to have to buy the bond buyer. Okay. They'll want to know what's going on with their money and their future. And so I hope so. I do hope so. I don't see, unfortunately, I think accountants have a difficulty. It's almost like accountants and political writers are like what? separated by a common language, like two people, except like the Brits and the Americans. And I think that we don't generally understand each other. What is necessary for a compelling story. Ultimately, I think that I hope that we'll be able to do that and get information to the public.
Yeah, John, we would be, happy to work with you. I think you're correct. Us accountants do get a little bit, in the weeds and don't get, but I think there are definitely some stories that you could help us, unpack and figure out ways that would get people interested in these topics. And we'd love to work with you in that area.
And
I would too.
This brings back my thought about soccer and team play, the importance of team defense and networks. There's a great book out there about lessons from soccer for management and teamwork. Anyway, all right. I've got a really uplifting question from Chris Roebling.
Chris.
Chris Roebling asks if any of you have any faith left in humanity, or are we irredeemable?
We're all redeemable, Chris. I don't have to tell you this. We are all redeemable, and the Redeemer came to visit us many years ago. And I believe in that firmly. So I don't know what else to say except you owe me a drink, definitely at the Union League Club, Chris.
Sheila,
yeah, and we do have, at Truth in Accounting, we do the financial state of the city of Chicago. We do 75 most populated cities, and we do all 50 states. We do have, states that are ahead of the game. It's interesting talking about Chris Tobey, who's in Kentucky. Kentucky's doing horrible. Their neighboring state, Tennessee's doing great. So there are some, everything is not a complete disaster in every single state. And, our hope is that, the states that are doing well could, be best practices for the states that aren't doing well. But, we have the city of Chicago, the state of Illinois that, continually, they have this funding scheme that a reporter brought it up to me today. It's like, well, yeah, but the city's paying that funding scheme where it's going to be funded 90% over 50 years. And it's like, no. The SEC said that was a fraudulent schedule. And they charged Illinois with securities fraud, but people continue to, go off of this, these misperceptions, misleading statements that, everything's fine, we're fully funding our, the governor came out, we balanced the budget, we fully funded the pension. Well, they fully funded the schedule that the SEC charged them with securities fraud because they said it's an impossible schedule and you're not fully funding the pensions. Oh, and if you read their bond offerings, it says you're not fully funding the pensions, but the governor can come out and say they are fully funding their pensions.
To answer Chris's question, after listening to the passion in both Sheila and John's voice, I think the answer is yes, we do believe that humanity has got a chance. Otherwise, we wouldn't be working on this stuff. We care about it for that reason.
I would like to apologize to Chris because I thought that he was speaking about humanity. But Chris, it's my fault. If you're thinking about, is Illinois redeemable? Is Chicago redeemable? I hate to tell you, the answer is probably no. I don't see any political will to do what must be done. And so, as a result, we're led by weaklings into the maelstrom at a time when we should be pulling out of it, to use a metaphor that Chris would love. The Scylla and Charybdis of our politics and government is such that we should be navigating ourselves out of it, but that would be difficult. So we're destined to get sucked into the maelstrom, and the last bondholder. I hope you have musical chairs and protect yourself, and I hope you get a chair. But most people will be gone by then.
Well, John, if Illinois and Chicago aren't redeemable, what is the outcome? Is it legal? Is it bankruptcy or some form of bankruptcy?
I would assume so. It's going to be chaos politically. You're seeing it already. with City of Chicago, the chaos that's coming. I'm writing about that for my next column in the Chicago, I almost said Tribune, at johncastnews.com. And it's about the ritual and liturgy of mayoral campaigns. You see Arnie Duncan being trotted out there as the next white knight to, by John Rogers, who has a lot of money. And ultimately, I think that there is no political will to do what must be done. I think it's something that Truth in Accounting and others have been saying for years. No?
Yes. And, and again, it's not the media. We have been frustrated at Truth in Accounting because, it's the media doesn't find it to be a sexy topic. So they just don't cover it. And we really think that our, representatives' forms of governments are being hurt. And
Yes.
You can see that in the city of Chicago. You can see that in Illinois. And I'm like you, John. I don't see anything, it's not like they're going, oh my gosh, the pensions are underfunded. We better start funding more. It's like they're just doubling down. They're just like, okay, well, we're only going to pay less than 50% this year. And we're going to tell the people it's fully funded, but we're not going to fully fund it. We're going to tell them we balance the budget. I don't even know why they have balanced budget requirements if they're just going to use, accounting gimmicks to, skirt those requirements.
There should any day now be an announcement that Chicago police have negotiated a new contract if they haven't already. But all that doesn't mean much to me because, as we said at the beginning of this, if the majority of police officers understand what's really going to happen to their pension, they will be less and less inclined to get out of their cars, which they are already for political reasons. And this is coming at a time when we have a spike in violent crime and chaos in the neighborhoods, and it's not good.
Yeah, the police fund only has 19 cents. It's worse than the other ones. It only has 19 cents for every dollar that's been funded. The city, chose to only put 43% of what they should have into that pension plan. Why should the police officers trust the city when they're not even, as you mentioned, covering, their backs in relation to this?
All I know about politics is that the guys who pour asphalt and concrete seem to get paid. I wonder why.
They have votes.
They have votes, and they also have the ability to contribute into politicians' plans. I think, Bill, with that happy note, I think it's time to wrap up. If John,
Yes,
do you have any closing comments?
I just want to. This is the first time that we've really been together, and I want to maintain our relationship and improve upon it. And for anyone out there listening, you can always reach me at johncastnews@gmail.com. And I hope you subscribe to the website. And Sheila and Bill, I don't have money yet. I am not monetizing this, so I probably need an accountant to help me. But I do want to offer you space on the website if you want to, anything you think is important.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Well, we'd love to be on your podcast.
Thank you.
It's great to be with you, period. And thanks for your contribution to, the discourse in Chicago for the last few decades and going forward. We really appreciate your work.
Thank you so much.